So today we're going to be finding out how water can travel really long distances, up to 350 metres upwards, without requiring energy. Now let's just have a think about this. Let's think about how far 350 metres actually is. I'm talking about these trees here. These are called redwood trees, and they are huge, absolutely massive. Look at the size of that human next to that tree. But somehow they managed to make water travel against the force of gravity in an upwards direction in a constant stream for 350 metres. Now, the thing is, it's really quite difficult to try to understand how things work inside plants when you can't actually see it happening. So it's quite helpful to relate it to something that we are more familiar with. For example, having a drink. There are some similarities with how humans can use a straw to suck a liquid up from a cup or a glass and into your mouth, with how trees, and all plants actually, manage to suck water from the soil up through the stem and out through the leaves. And that's what today's lesson is about. It's transpiration. Now, this is a key word that you need to know, and you need to be able to explain what transpiration is and then apply that knowledge to some new situations. Now, basically what transpiration is the movement of water from the soil to the roots, through the stem, to the leaves and out. Have a think now though, where does this process actually start? Does it start at the roots when the water goes in, or does it start when it leaves the leaves? Well, I can tell you, it's here. The process of transpiration starts when water is removed from the surface of a leaf. What happens then is that there is a change in pressure and water is sucked up through the plant from the soil and out. So transpiration is kind of a continuous cycle where water leaves the leaf and is replaced by water that is sucked up from the soil by the roots. It goes in an upwards direction and is taken to the leaves. Now, it's the leaves that need the water. Water is a vital part of photosynthesis. So that's why this process has to be really, really efficient. And it's also why plants need to make sure that they are protected against losing too much water. Imagine what would happen if the water in the soil ran out, if it got too dry. That would stop the whole process. No water, no photosynthesis. No photosynthesis, no sugars. So, we need to just have a little bit of a think about how the water actually gets out. How does it leave the leaf? So here's the third diagram for you. And it shows you the stomata, which are the little holes on the underside of the leaf. Now, it's really important here that you notice that this is actually the underside of the leaf that you're seeing here. It looks like it's the top, but they've just flipped it over so that it's easier for us to see what is going on. Okay? The holes are on the underside of the leaf to protect the leaf. It'd be no good if these holes were exposed, because the water would just leave far too quickly. It's so much better that they are on the underside. but we'll come to that in a different lesson. Right, so take a few moments to look at these diagrams again, to read them, to make sure you understand what's going on. And we're going to pause shortly so that you can have a think about this question. What are the weather conditions that would make transpiration happen quickly? Okay, so I'm going to pause here. I'll come back shortly with a little bit of a hint if you're getting stuck. Right, if you're struggling to answer this, perhaps have a think about the kind of weather conditions that make sweating a bit more comfortable. All right, when water leaves a leaf, it's really quite similar to how sweat leaves our skin. So what sort of weather conditions will help us to sweat, but also help that sweat to be removed? Right, so we're looking for warm weather. It needs to be warm to help evaporation to happen. Right, evaporation from the surface is essential. Otherwise, no more water is going to be drawn through the plant to replace it. The warmth provides the heat energy for evaporation to happen. Next up, we want it to be dry. Now, this is actually the one that a lot of people forget to mention. You know what it's like on those hot, sticky days, those humid days. Water just stays, it just sticks to you. Well, it's exactly the same for plants. They prefer it to be quite dry because the water will leave quicker. It's a lot easier for evaporation to happen when it is dry. And finally, they like it to be windy because the wind will carry those water molecules away from the surface of the leaf, meaning that they can be replaced more quickly. So the ideal weather conditions for transpiration are warm, windy and dry. Now, what we're going to do is watch a short video. It's about 3 minutes long. It's really good, so don't even think about skipping this bit. Click on the link, scroll down a little bit, put the video into full screen and watch it. These are the questions that you need to answer either while you're watching the video or afterwards. It's up to you. Hopefully you've got these questions in front of you now, but if you don't have that resource, if you don't have them in front of you, perhaps take a moment to jot them down, or just wait till after the video, come back to them and answer them then. Right, so you should have watched that video. If you haven't, you really must go back and watch it. So, answers. The tube that carries water and minerals through a plant, that's a xylem. That's how you say it, xylem. Xylo means woody. The other tube in the plants is called the phloem, and the phloem carries sugars through a plant. Sugars they're like the food of the plant, so perhaps a way to remember which one's which. Think phloem, think of the sound at the beginning, phloem, food. Now, one of these tubes, xylem or phloem, carries substances in one direction only, but which one is it? Now, this wasn't in the video, but think hard and work this one out. So I'm going to model the thinking process for you here. Let's take each one of these in turn. So, the phloem carries sugars. Right, So, where are the sugars going to go? Well, firstly, let's think about where they're made. Sugars are made by photosynthesis, so they are made in the leaf. But where are they needed? Well, the roots are going to sometimes need sugars. The roots need to respire. They need sugars for respiration because they carry out active transport some of the time, and that requires energy. So therefore, respiration must happen. So we know then that the sugars will need to go from the leaves down to the roots. Where else are they going to need to go? Well, if they're not needed immediately for respiration, they're going to be stored. And they could be stored in a different part of the leaf. If it's a plant that has fruit, the sugars might need to be transported to the fruit. So I think you get the idea here, well hopefully you do, that the phloem needs to be carrying sugars in all different directions around the plant. So the answer to this question is the xylem. The xylem carries water and minerals, and they only go up, never down, rarely across. They go from the bottom up to the top, one direction. There you go. And the missing words here. So the first one there, osmosis. Now this question links to B1, your first biology topic, and it is an absolutely crucial bit of knowledge. So any time that you spend reminding yourself about osmosis, which is the movement of water from where it is highly concentrated to where it is in a lower concentration across a semi-permeable membrane, for example, a cell membrane, that is what osmosis is, and it will come up over and over and over again. So please, if you're not sure about what that is at the moment, go back and find out or get in touch and ask. And the final question in transpiration, water is pulled through the plants. Remember a few slides ago I said that it all starts in the leaf when the water evaporates from the surface of the leaf, and water is then pulled through the plant. Right, so if you struggled with any of those questions, what you should do is go back, start perhaps at the beginning, and just go through those slides again until you are more confident. Because what we're going to do now is have a look at an exam question. And we're not going to answer it straight away. I want to go through the question with you, just to point out where people often make mistakes because they for some reason ignore the information that the examiners are kind enough to give us to help us. But you're not going to fall into that trap. So the first part of the question is just a straightforward retrieval, remember the word question. What is the process by which water is lost from plant leaves? Write your answer down now. Now we're having a look at, for part B, an experiment that was set up by some students to measure the water loss from a potted plant. Right, so what have we got here? Here's our plant. It is on a balance that is recording the mass. So this is a really good way to set up this experiment actually, because it's very, very difficult to see water leaving. You can very rarely see water leaving unless perhaps it's a plant that's underwater. And you know, maybe you can see things leaving a plant, you can see gas leaving a plant, but you can't really see the water going. So they have come up with the idea just to see what happens to the mass. If the mass is going down, that means that water is being lost. But what's the plastic bag all about? Why is that there? In some questions you'll be asked about that. The reason for the plastic bag is to make sure that any water that is being lost from the soil is not counted in the experiment because it will just stay there because it's trapped by the plastic bag. This is making sure that we're only counting the water that is lost from the leaves. Water then will only be lost through stomata because stomata are only found on the leaves. And just remember, they're found on the underside of the leaf. Even if that knowledge isn't relevant for the rest of the question, this is the process to go through when you are working out what a question is trying to test. What information are you having to retrieve to answer that question? It's not over yet. There's more to it. So they put the apparatus in different environmental conditions. Now you can see them. I'm not going to read them out to you, but the thing to notice is that 2 of them were in still, 2 of them were in windy, and the temperature was different. So have a think about how the stillness, the wind, and the temperature are going to affect transpiration in a plant. You're given the results here. So that is the reading, the mass at the beginning of the experiment at 0 minutes, and here is the reading at the end. And you're being asked to say which of these conditions, A, B, C or D, caused the fastest, the most rapid water loss. Have a think about how you're going to work that one out. And then you can move straight on to the final part of this particular question, which is to explain whatever the answer you put here, why. Why was it that water was lost most rapidly under those conditions? So I'm going to pause it here, answer the questions, and then when you've answered them, press play and move on to the next slide. Right, so ready for the answers. If you've got any gaps, do not proceed with this video. Go back to the earlier parts of the video or have a look at your resources to help you to answer those questions. First one, straightforward, transpiration. Actually, you'd get the mark if you said evaporation as well, because that is actually how the water gets out. Next up, hopefully what you decided to do was to work out the difference between the mass at the beginning of the experiment and the mass at the end. The one with the biggest difference was D. Now, it would be a really good idea before answering the question to just decide which one you think it would be. And it works, doesn't it? From what we learned earlier on in the lesson, we know that wind and a warmer temperature are going to help transpiration. And fortunately, the answers back that up. But I'm really particularly interested to know how you got on with this final part of the question. Now, I'm not just going to give you the answer, of course I'm not. What I want you to do now, pause the video again when I've stopped talking and read these 3 answers that were given and decide how many marks each answer would get. Okay, do that now. Right, so the first one, okay, the answers popped up. The first one got 0 marks, but why? It looks like a good answer, doesn't it? Because they've used key terminology and it makes sense, it reads well. They made a classic mistake here by talking about the wrong process. Yes, D had the highest temperature, but the thing is that osmosis is not involved in that particular experiment. If they had put transpiration or evaporation here instead of osmosis, they would have got at least a mark. But by using the incorrect terminology, they didn't get anything. So what about the next one then? D is more windy, so the water molecules leave the surface quicker, so transpiration is faster. Good answer. It's important to say here that it's not the only good answer, and you will get a copy of the mark scheme and be able to see what would get marks. But what this person has done well is that they've gone for the windiness, and they've talked about how that will cause the water molecules to leave the surface of the leaf. But then they've finished it off by linking it to transpiration and saying that transpiration is faster. And because it's faster, the mass is lost quicker. And finally, was the third one any good? Well, it was all right. They got 1 mark. They got 1 mark for saying that the higher temperature causes the water molecules to move faster. Yes, but so what? Where are they going? What are they doing? The bit that's missing from this answer is that they haven't said that the higher energy helps evaporation. If they'd done that, there's the 2 marks. Right, so spend a couple of minutes writing your perfect answer if it needs to be improved, and then you can check it against the mark scheme when I send you the mark scheme out. So I'm going to leave you with a bit of a challenge. So right at the beginning I showed you this redwood tree. I said it's 350 metres, but I likened it to a straw that we would use to get water from a cup into our mouth. Thing is though, that's about where the similarity ends, because apparently it's impossible to have a straw that works that is 1 metre long. Now, I want you to find out if that's true. I'd like you to have a go at constructing a straw, maybe tape several straws together, and see how long you can make it and for it still to work. And when you've done that, send me a photo, let me know how you got on. But then go and find out, what is it that plants can do that can make water travel for such a long distance in a tree? So what do plants do differently to just regular straws that make it able to carry that water for such a long distance? I look forward to seeing your answers. See you next time.